That'd be the easiest one. And what I'd like to do is kind of go down the line, starting with Ted. So you, and we'll just go through the questions. We try and handle it that way. We started on in the capital. Isn't there a capital in? It's in the back of the folder, otherwise. Let's see. One of the questions is the 25,000 for interior finishes, and the bigger detail on that was interior painting and blinds. 25,000. So my question is that something that could be just, you could see to it out of what you budgeted for care and maintenance, rather than putting that in the capital budget. And I think, Tim, you and I talked about that.
Yeah. So I think I'm gonna let Steve just once again reiterate those two capital items, just so that there is a familiarity of what we're referring to. And then we can talk further just in terms of, how to possibly address those moving forward.
So the issue came up with the blinds, when we had our incident October 1st.
Right.
So there were rooms that have damaged blinds that we looked to replace right away. There were areas that we noticed that could use some. So we had put that number together in the hopes to address most of those issues. So not much of it was going to be used for paint. Most of it was going to be used for the window treatments.
So my understanding from talking to Tim, they were kind of broken for a while. This isn't something that just cropped up the day of that October incident.
No, I think it was just something that was brought to light then when people tried to use ones that they haven't used in a while, maybe.
Okay.
And then they were not able to.
So is that something that could be absorbed in what you've already budgeted for care and maintenance?
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit, and I have Karen's got all the full detail with that. So what we wanted to do, we did budget more this year within facilities, because we have not budgeted, we have not had a facilities budget to work with. That's been the area where reductions have been made in the past, and I can't speak to all of the decisions that have been made relevant to deferred maintenance, but here would be, as you and I had talked about, one of these items that, if we had known in the moment that a blind or two blinds needed to be replaced, that would be one circumstance. Unfortunately, it was not, the district was not aware to the degree to which the number of these blinds were not operating. And when the October 1st, and there may be some other topics of conversation that we talk about this evening that are going to have some relevance to this October 1st incident that the district had gone through. We had actually surveyed our faculty and staff regarding just what were the areas of concern. We also did a debriefing with law enforcement. And one of the topics that came up in our debrief with law enforcement, as well as with our faculty and staff, was the fact that they could not control the blinds. So when you're dealing with, law enforcement coming in very high volume around the schools, guns drawn, and not being able to shut that out eyesight of children, it's a concern of ours. That's where that request has come from, the generation of that request. The money that we have put into the facilities budget, and it's important, and I do want Karen to be a part of this because she has some most recent history. Where I worry is to the degree of which we are spending money on even the high school, for example, for maintenance year over year. We have shared with the board in a presentation that was given in January of really an 8-day snapshot of the cost of repairs that we have had to do, some of which were high school, Some were in a few of the other schools that were, that was in excess of $25,000. And it's worries that we have that without having money in those accounts to cover what might be these costs, we're gonna run into these issues where that's gonna potentially lead to a deficit. Because when a rooftop unit goes at Memorial School, as two motors did go, there's a significant cost of replacement to those. 2 weeks ago, we had two indoor air units that went at the high school that were placed. One was placed in the server room. There was not, when the high school was built, central air was not included in two spaces that are considered hotspots in schools, one of them being the electrical room. For those of you who have been in the building, it's in the back corner. It's where all of the electrical components are housed. And then the second is the server room. That server room is providing all of the networking service. And there is tremendously expensive, Rich. There's got to be at least a good 100,000, if not more, in server materials that are in that room. Correct?
Probably 3 times that, yeah.
Yeah, so the air unit went down, the air conditioning wall mounted split condition unit went down. And we had to replace one of them, of which now we're still kind of at some point in time, put another one in. It's these costs that you can't predict that you're gonna end up having to address in the moment. So we did put money into the budget this year for facilities. It would not be able to cover the cost of these if the priority of the board is to go ahead, get these blinds taken care of this for the safety and security matter. There could be other projects that may come up over the course of the year where that could be an issue. What we did talk about was the fact that, you know, one of the requests that I know Director of Facilities Fontanella has made is to have some degree of a contingency fund set aside in capital. That has been something that's been requested in the past. I don't think it's been received with by actually putting it into it. However, if we knew that those funds are there and they're not utilized, they can carry forward. And there will be at least funds that can cover some of these unanticipated expenses. In a conversation that I had with Karen, we have spent close to 6 figures annually in repairs to the high school. And with it being the newest building, it's almost the building that you actually invest the least amount of money in is the oldest building for the district, which is Center School. And so these have been some extremely costly repairs for the high school. And if you'd like Steve to share some of those that we've gone through this year, we just had, we almost had to replace the compression system for the fire suppression sprinkler system because the motor that is in the ground up behind the school wasn't maintaining its pressure. So they had to have a crane to do a lift, pull it out, repair some of the lines with it, but it's those worries that we have and just what you're spending on facilities. Keep in mind that any will or any need that needs to happen, we'll continue to address things as best as we possibly can. So if the funds were removed, obviously we're going to try to do the best that we can. But I just am trying to, for all of you, get out of the deficit element that, you know, has been somewhat building over time. And this is our effort to try that. Yeah.
Just so we can kind of move on here. I get what you're saying in regards to maybe some things we neglected and now it's showing up. I thought it was my phone.
So we're just talking about
The other item, Ted, that we talked to, or Tim.
Yep.
Too many T's in here, but we talked about there was 100,000 put in capital for this potential HVAC mandate from the Department of Ed. When we talked, I don't have in front of me what was in the, I think we put money in last year, like 100,000. You indicated that you dipped into that for repairs. So when we talked, we kind of, would it be possible to bring that down to 50,000? also knowing that we've got a little money from what we put aside, I think what your plan was. Just get some estimates using a small amount of money.
Yeah.
That there really isn't the necessity to have the full 100,000 in there at this point.
On a positive note, we did put the RFQ out this past Friday. We want to get, obviously, this moved forward so that you as Board of Finance have the ability to make a decision as to how much money. We really just don't know how much this audit is gonna cost. We got the RFQ out on Friday. It is posted. We already know that we have 3 bids that have come in relevant to it. So within the next month, we will actually be able to get a better sense because we will bring them in for interview. And that'll tell you really how much money it's gonna cost to do that audit. Right now, I believe there may be about 75, Jeff is not here right now, so I don't know what's remaining in that account. But I know there was that other request for 100,000. Perhaps it's not gonna be $175,000 to do that audit. But
Right.
that's why we wanted to get that RFQ out so we could find out from the engineers how much it's gonna cost. Okay, so that is a possibility.
From what you're saying, we won't know in time.
Right.
It depends on really, by the time you have to finalize everything, with this, we should know. I think our plan was that, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong here. We were looking at the beginning of April, is when we're gonna have everything be turned in. So we've got a few weeks that it's gotta sit out there to see if we get those bids that'll come in. But the minute we can get them in here for interview, we will do that. It's just timing wise, I don't know when you're gonna set your actual final number. But hopefully it would be in a time where we would know.
It may not come before the Board of Finance sends its numbers on, if that's what you were asking.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're, yeah, it would be helpful if we had that, because then we can make certain decisions. The only other thing that I want to bring up, and we may not be able to do this, I don't know. The reading program that you're purchasing. I know, a while back, and you weren't here, when we did have ARPA money. We didn't use that to put aside and have it, what do I want to say? Allocated to where we might spend it, so we didn't have to give the money back, so that window has passed. So now I'm wondering if we take what you have budgeted in your operating budget and put it in the capital budget.
I would highly advise so what we have done right now is artificially inflated a textbook line. The Board of Education is not going to have $100,000, in this case here, $110,000 request in its textbook line year over year. That number is exceedingly high. If there is the ability for this town to purchase that program ahead, that is $110,000 amount, which amounts to a little over 1/4% of the budget that could be taken out. Completely, because what we could do is, the general accounting principles allow for you to purchase ahead. So long as you put the materials out there. So there's a lot of organization that we have to do once this volume of material comes in. The sooner we can get those out into the hands of our teachers in preparation for the upcoming school year, the better off we will be. So that has been one that I have mentioned to the town manager, is that you've got this sitting in the board budget right now. In terms of the effort, I know you and I talked about this the other day. I want to make one point with it, is that the time, so in order to get those ESSER grants, as you are aware, there was a whole application process that had to happen the year preceding it, of which this whole grant or this whole reading program initiative did not come till following that. I had researched, because that was one of your concerns, is, we hadn't used those funds. The timeline of when those ESSER funds were there to the timeline that the state actually even had given us the final list of approved programs wasn't until after those ARPA funds had already been utilized. And it was.
So that's my point, is that
Yeah.
early on planning is that should have come to the capital committee, maybe. When we had that ARPA money, the town ARPA money, not Board of Ed, any money that you had.
Right,
It would have
right.
been town money.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that we didn't know from the State Department of Education, the legislature, that we were not, there was a whole process that the district had to go through to even be approved for its program that it
Okay.
wanted. The timeline was not.
So the
in line
bottom
with that.
line is, we can pull out what,
Abs-
out of your operating budget, how much?
That would be I think we put 110 in there for that program. We have a $75,000 right to read grant. But I believe it's about 100, it's close to $110,000 that we actually put into the budget for that. So the answer to your question is yes, that would be one. I would make that full recommendation to you all. Because it's artificially inflated a line, in your budget.
So you had two concepts, I think, on the table. One was to move it out of
Operating,
operating into the capital,
right,
which puts it as a fiscal 26 expense.
Right.
That's true.
right,
Tim was also talking about, and that really depends on how we end the current fiscal year, there is the. Depending on what we come up with, there is the possibility that we could allocate. Remaining funds from this year, if things go well, to cover some of that, but
You mean surplus from the town funds?
yeah.
Oh, is that what you're talking about?
I think that was part of what Tim mentioned, I just wanna make sure that we're not
okay.
crossing
but
our
my
conversation.
concern right
If your
now-
deficit, I'm not sure there's gonna be that much, right?
We don't know.
Well, my only logic behind this is, that's $100,000 that would sit in the operating budget forever.
Gotcha, yeah,
That's what
I
we're
agree
trying
with
to
that, I just wanted to
avoid.
make sure we were talking about the
Yeah.
same thing. So right now, you're talking about moving it to capital.
That we're thinking, okay, we're not really saving any money. We are in the long run, because that 100,000 is not in the operating budget.
Correct. So your actuals aren't gonna report that come next year. So that's where that
Well,
should happen.
obviously, you'd have $100,000 every year going forward, because you're not buying the reading program again.
We wouldn't make, right, and we wouldn't be making that request moving forward. You
Right.
wouldn't see those types of numbers in the textbook line. In terms of additional funds, my other thought was that is there the possibility that the town would entertain? I know there was contingency money set aside this past summer, more relevant to special education, but is there the possibility that some of those contingency funds could be used to offset that program? But I would recommend taking that out for next year because it just will then drop that line, the bottom line.
Anyone else on capital?
Yes. Is a request for $15,000 for fall protection for playscapes. When we were talking with Sean from Park and Rec last night, he indicated that his department was taking over the fall protection. Do we need a second request? in
So,
this
so they do
capital
just the
for that?
parks. this fall protection is for all the playscapes at Memorial School
Yes,
and the playscape at Center,
he indicated that he was gonna take it over for the schools too.
not to me.
Oh,
But we funded it,
He funded
we
it.
funded it from special revenue. We didn't take the line out of the capital, we funded it from special program.
It wasn't, we didn't do it this year. We did it last year. We had capital money the previous year for it. We skipped this past year and then we're gonna do it again this year. I'm not sure what is going with the park and
I
rec.
know what,
Because we funded, most of the.
well, there's 15,000 in this year's capital budget,
Mhm.
and it's going to be funded through Parks and Rec Special Revenue Fund.
Yeah, I didn't know that. If
We
that's
haven't,
the
Oh.
case.
that was not sure, but I'm sure.
Yeah,
It's
the
it's
same
in the capital
15,000.
It is the
spreadsheet.
same 15,000.
So to get you your answer, it sounds like yes, that would come out.
all right. Thanks for clarifying.
The security items, you're gonna talk about the grant possibility?
So right now, once again, this is not information that we would be able to get to before the end of the time that you need to set the budget. There is funding that right now is in legislature that there's proposals about funding for security. Once again, those matching grant funds, there is the potential that perhaps some of the Senator Onmar has been the one who has proposed it. We don't know if it's gonna end up happening, but that could bring some degree of savings, but it's not something that we can guarantee in this moment that it's gonna be there, but that could be helpful if it does come. Because then we could apply for those funds, to cover some of these safety measures.
Okay, so you can't even apply at this point.
Correct.
So, I'm aware that there's been some renovations in the high school. Walls moved and things like that. Where's that money coming from?
We did.
I,
Not that I know of.
no, so you have to tell,
Intentionally.
Yeah.
You know?
where in the high school have there been walls moved?
We didn't move any,
For special ed,
no, we didn't move any walls.
and a new room.
Yeah.
No?
No.
Bad information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd have definitely known that one.
Okay, yeah, that's what I figured.
Bob, there's been no change of program space up at that.
No.
No, okay.
Any other questions on capital?
The capital committee cut quite a bit from the request. You look at the both columns there, it looks like there's. At least 5 requests for a lot of money. We cut out of it in the capital, so I think the education, capital is early lean. Myself,
Under advisement.
yes, no problem.
Any other questions? Karen, do you have my document? Okay. Yeah.
You want that information to that's all true.
Yeah, Karen, I'd say that was really helpful.
Or just what I need to, we're reading the same one.
You want the email today?
Yeah. There was a lot of emails and documents that.
Okay, yeah, I know, I ran out of paper, so
That's it.
reading it on the iPad is challenging.
I know.
All the reading paper.
Yeah.
I am.
Nobody.
I know, I had Jeff to make sure.
Yeah, I noticed the cameras now, I don't see it.
And just a quick question before we move on. Can I have a head count of your teachers, administrators, your paras, what we're looking at for next year? Because I found the dollars, but not physical head count.
Yeah, I don't have, it's built into that staffing report that you have a copy of. I don't have the exact numbers unless we have a separate chart here, but I don't have the exact numbers of how many certified FTEs. It's if you all have that staffing report that was given, it breaks it down by school. We can run the calculations now if we need, but I can get that number to you.
Yeah. Okay. Starting with you. Any questions? Did we clarify?
Not at this time.
We'll come back.
Not at this time, but I will be coming back. I'm waiting for age.
Go ahead, AJ.
I have questions.
So I'd like to have some discussion around the interventionists that have moved as a result of loss of tuition. It looks like it's a pretty sizable number in the budget. You sum up where we're seeing increases or what those increases are across the interventionist line items. Can I get a little bit of clarity on, what those roles are and was that, I summed up like 350, was that really all covered by tuition? Or if I look at increases, there was some line items in here that are tied to interventionists. The increases are summed to on the order of 350K.
Yeah, so we can actually, why don't we be able to define those roles, just to make sure, I want to make sure we're talking about the same, because I've had a few communications that have come in the past week. So are we referring to the certified interventionists, meaning that these are those that are providing math tutoring to the district? Or are we refer, because I don't want to go off in one realm, or are we talking specifically about the classified interventionists themselves in the classified realm? Because there were two separate questions that I fielded this week.
I think you may be referring to where we lost a student in tuition and now it's represented in there, 3 people.
Classified.
Right.
Are
Classified,
back in.
you got it.
Yeah, let me give you
Yeah.
first just a overview, so we all keep in the same direction. There were positions that were covered by, revenue that we lost, student. And so that was about 140,000, 150,000. If we ended up having to move positions into the operating budget. And then we also added another certified BCBA, which Ron and Tim can describe the role, they can describe the work that these folks do. But that was a decision that was made in early July to actually save money in professional technical services and get a full-time BCBA, so that you see the bump in the classified salaries, but you can also see that there's a reduction in professional technical services from this current year budget.
Karen, were those interventions all tied to the same student that we lost?
No, not at all. I left the certified teaching positions in the STARS tuition to be covered by the 2 remaining students. I made that decision based on the fact that over the past 3 or 4 budget cycles, we had said we added a teacher and they would be covered by STARS tuition. So that statement is still true.
And then to answer the question specifically, those 3 staff members were not assigned to the one student who we lost the tuition on. Okay, it was just being used to obviously reduce the amount all told that we're putting in classified staffing. We applied the tuition across 3 staff members to be able to do that. Okay. Did you want an explanation as to the roles themselves? I know you started with that as well, just so we can provide that if you wanted, or
A brief one would be helpful.
yeah. Why don't we check?
So the board certified behavior analysts are, it's not a educational certification, but it is a state licensure. That's required for them to be in the district, and they oversee, they consult with our staff and work directly with students regarding behavior and identifying behaviors of concerns, coming up with plans to address those behaviors, and then supporting staff in carrying out those behavior plans. So students that might be pretty dysregulated, they can help support them to get bring them to a more regulated state. Intervention specialists, it's really a form of a paraeducator, like a classification of a paraeducator with specialized training in supporting students with pretty significant disabilities, intellectual disabilities, low functioning autism, that have some concerning and potentially dangerous behaviors to themselves, so they need to work directly with those students to support those needs that are directed by the BCBA.
Just as I want to add this, because this is where it gets into the financial realm as well, that I think is important to understand was that, so classified staffing, as you are well aware, is a lot less expensive than the certified staffing. So you do see increases where we're recognizing it is that interventionists are hired because there is a purpose, a specific purpose of need with a particular student, as stated, who could easily dysregulate, has proven that. As opposed to outplacement, which would be very expensive, but also as opposed to hiring certified staff, this district has made a conscious effort to bring in classified staffing where it's possible, which is at a greater reduced cost. One of the cost avoidance measures that was brought up previously in a presentation, I just want to share with you in regards to it, is that employee costs are both wage and benefit. I know there was an email correspondence that the town manager received about potentially being part-time with these classified staff members. This district went down that pathway many years ago and struggled to actually hire people into the roles. But on top of it, as a means of bringing down those costs, we have changed the health insurance option for those individuals, where they get it for single, as if they have it single. But if they want to have family, they have to pay full cost, 100% of cost to it. So there was a cost avoidance measure that was put in place in hiring these positions, but certainly recognizing that it's a lot less expensive to hire the classified staff than it is to hire certified staff altogether. And there have been increases, and those increases that you see in classified staffing, I've shared this with you all. East Hampton is not an anomaly. This is what the movement has been with school districts to try to keep the costs of special education down. And this is just one of the means by which it's done.
The licensed BCBA does cost more than twice as much as a interventionist that's unlicensed, and they're also required to work all year round.
Question though, and just a point with it is that if that BCBA, so by law, we are required to provide this behavioral programming to students. If we don't have, and a lot of districts have moved as you have here, if you want to contract that service out, you're going to pay significantly more for those BCBA services as opposed to actually having the employee. So albeit it is an additional staff person in the classified realm, it would be in your contracted services where it had been, and it can be tremendously expensive. When you have them here, you have greater flexibility of hours of service that you can provide, because the agencies that you get BCBAs through are extremely expensive.
So, I just quickly, I want to confirm. What is the tuition that we charge for the kids that come in? What is that dollar value?
It is,
Bless you.
it's about $150,000 a student. It depends on there's different levels of need, so it's basically it's for the particular student and any additional services that we have to provide for that student.
Okay, yeah, I'm assuming you did increase it because for this coming year, because you had the utility, that major hit with the utilities.
Those adjustments were not, this year during the current school year.
We also look at it, we also look at the market for the services. We're trying to, we're operating it totally on a business-like way. So that we cover all of our costs, a share of, in a sense, overhead, because this is taking everyone's time. And then also comparing to be sure that we're in line with our LearnResc or other services, so that we don't price ourselves out of the market as well, so.
What's the downside of pricing yourself out?
bringing a couple teachers into the operating budget. They're covering far more, you know, each one of these, there's only 2 students left, and each one of them contributing roughly $150,000. They're not having any individually added cost except for a para. So that we have, it's almost 100% profit in a sense to the district.
One parent per each of these students.
Yeah. But they pay for that directly.
Oh, I see.
We bill them for that.
So there's 150 and then your bill?
Yeah.
Underneath that. For the parent.
That includes the para.
No, you just said the town pays, the other town pays for the parent. I'm confused here.
Whatever the student needs directly, we pay for. But aside from the para, which an individual para costs us $34,000 roughly. To still have 150,000, you're still looking at a significant margin of contribution to East Hampton's. That we get to take out of the operating fund and cover 3 professional staff next year.
And $150,000, the market number, the gentleman's agreement between towns, how does?
It's a full contract that is revised by our attorney, reviewed by their attorney. And again, compared to what the market is for the services they're receiving.
We'd rather be receiving that money than paying it out.
Oh, no, I'm not arguing that, because really bringing them in from another town, it's a revenue pool.
Yeah.
Okay, but if we didn't bring any of them in. We have teachers dedicated to just that. Correct?
No, we are paying for teachers out of that fund. And when the teachers' roles were added over the past history,
Well, maybe
we
what
said
would
we paid for them out of that fund.
As if we could see the history of the revenue year over
All right,
year,
sure.
because I don't think we see that in here.
I think if and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this as well, Bridget, so. The revenues that we're generating, you're 100% correct to say that, and Dr. Brown saying is that the revenues that we are charging districts who have their children come here are offsetting your operating cost budget with staffing. We don't have a one-to-one teacher model with the students who are coming in, so we're using those to offset some of the operational cost of this district because we have staffing that's here with specialized training through the years that can accommodate them. The goal obviously would be that if there is more regional opportunity to do further similar to this, there is an opportunity for us to potentially do that, which does bring additional savings to the district. As well as not just exploring internal programs, but exploring programs with other school districts. Agency prices, and I know this could be the next element of it, is agency prices could be astronomical in comparison to what we do as a district, but fortunately, because of the agreements that we have in place, they're opting to send children here to East Hampton. They're satisfied with the model as opposed to doing another agency. But with that, it is giving us an opportunity to get revenue. We don't want to lose that revenue because we've escalated our prices so much that it's not going to attract.
So if we can just see what revenue is coming in, how you're offsetting your
Sure.
operating budget.
Sure.
Just a quick question. I know it's not relevant, but I was just thinking here in spreadsheets. For each individual student, is there any way to somehow throw a cost on? I'd say for a particular student, whether in-house or bringing somebody in, say like, you need 0.5 hours of a paraprofessional and all the other costs by individual student. I realize they all have different needs, but is there any way to distill it down to that particular fact per student?
Yes, so, you know, I don't know if you want to speak to this in terms of our calculations and so forth.
I think we've done that, and you know, I don't know if it would help with clarification, but if we have a teacher that's serving 6 kids, 6 of our students, and we have a student from another district that comes in, we're not hiring another teacher. That teacher's now gonna support 7
I
students.
realize
You
that.
got-
I do realize that, but again, I'm not seeing the incoming revenue that's offsetting the budget.
So what you want is just the total amount of revenue.
Right, I
coming
wanna
in.
see,
Yeah,
you know, you're telling me it's offsetting the budget.
Yes,
But the budget that we're looking at, I didn't see a revenue.
it's being applied, so it's.
That's my point.
Right, it's done at net,
We're not
right,
seeing-
Well, it's a
so,
separate fund. And the budget that you're reviewing is the operating budget paid by local taxpayers.
I realize that. I realize that. But
Okay.
I think it's appropriate for Board of Finance to see, you know, because we're told we have all this revenue coming in. We don't know what it is.
so we can definitely get, the figures as far as the revenue is concerned, just so that you know, I mean, this district has done a great job with putting it at net.
And you will not,
And that's-
anyone can
right.
argue that fact.
Right, so it's it's the same, right, it's here's the document that she was pulling some of the revenue information from. But it's even like with excess costs, you know, those are all applied at net. In the estimations of the budget, all of those funds go directly toward offsetting your operating budget, okay? There are districts that will plan it at gross, which means that they wait and see how much they're gonna get, and then they'll offset towards the end of the year. We factor the budget, having already reduced out what our anticipated revenues are gonna be.
You touched briefly on the certified math and English specialists. Are those specialists that were grant funded, are they being rolled into the operating budget currently?
Okay, so yes, and I wanna be able to speak to this because I know that this has come up, and
How many are there?
so we're gonna actually, we could share all of this information. We knew the question was gonna come as it related to these, and I'll first start with the legislative piece to it. I'll have Mary give you the actual numbers, because we went back all the way to 2012 in the District of East Hampton to take a look at these roles. These are these other interventionists, these are certified staff members who provide what's called a response to intervention program. We have literacy specialists, we have math specialists. As Dr. Brown is mentioning, one of these positions was funded through a grant, but I want to be able to explain this. Districts in the state of Connecticut by statute are required to provide what's called a scientifically research-based intervention program. It's in statute. That program itself, we have to provide because it's the beginnings before a student can even be identified. I think we often think that students who are identified as special ed, it just happens in a decision. There is an entire process that is required of school districts to do, and that is to provide them regular education supports. And that's what these individuals do in this district. This district has had interventionists. However, the numbers of them, I think there's been this question of what the numbers were and have we added and what did this grant do? And believe it or not, our review of this is looking at it to say that this grant was actually supplanting what was already being paid for by this district previously. So when the grant had come in, it actually was already at that point in time had been funded. And though there was not a supplant provision with the grant that was used to cover it. So the numbers themselves of the interventionists, they've actually increased in their responsibilities as well, where in 2012, they didn't provide direct service to students. But with the change of the law, they are now working hand in hand with students. And we're seeing the improvements, obviously, in the academics, as I had shared the other night. But do you want to share the historicals on those numbers?
Sure. So when we've talked about them as interventionists, they provide what we call intervention services, which are when we identify a student who might not be making appropriate growth or mastering all grade level skills, we want to close those gaps. We want to identify that. We have an obligation to monitor all of our students' academic performance. We do that 3 times a year so we can closely monitor their progress. Intervention is a term used to describe that intense, targeted, frequent support that a student might receive if they have any learning gaps in math or literacy. We really refer to these individuals in our certified salaries as our instructional specialists, so they're either literacy or math specialists. And they provide direct service to students who are in need of support in advance of any kind of special education service. So this is a regular education service. In 2012, as just to kind of give a perspective over time, the district had 5 literacy specialists. 3 were at Memorial School, 1 was at Center School, and 1 was at the middle school. The model recommends that you intervene early and often when you identify a student who has needs. So it makes sense that you see that cluster of 3 at Memorial School where reading is such a critical outcome. In addition to those 5 literacy specialists at that time, there was 1 K-12 literacy coordinator and 1 K-12 math coordinator. Those were certified teachers. They did not provide direct service to students. They worked from a systems lens and they supported implementation of services and staff. Fast forward to 2015. At that time, we kept the 5 literacy specialists, 3 at Memorial, 1 at Center, 1 at Middle. By that time, those 2 K-12 coordinators had been shifted into 1.5 math specialists. Around this time in schools, it became clear that numeracy needed the same support as literacy, that when we identify a student who might have a gap in their learning, we want to give them that support. This is in reference, as Dr. Van Tassel was just speaking to, of these mandates that were coming out at the federal and then state level to provide a response to intervention model. And so in 2015, we had a total from 7 in 2012 instructional specialists to 6.5. Since then, currently, we have reduced our literacy specialists. We have 2 at Memorial, 1 at Center, and 1 at Middle for a total of 4. 2 at Memorial, 1 at Center, 1 at Middle for a total of 4. We have a total of 3 math specialists. So 1 at Memorial, 1 is split between Memorial and Center, and 1 at Middle. So in that K-8 range, when we're really getting those foundational skills strong, and that's a total of 7. So in 2012, we had 7, and in 2024, we have 7 instructional specialists. We faded a part-time math specialist last spring at the high school, and that position no longer exists. So we have the 4 literacy specialists down from 5, and we have the 3 math specialists.
And 2 of the original 7 in 2012 didn't even provide direct service to students.
And now all 7 of these staff members provide direct support to students. That's their primary function in the day. About 80% of their time is dedicated to student support.
Yeah, we have well-paid professional teachers. These interventionalists are necessary to supplement our capable teachers.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So yes, you do have very competent and capable teachers. The model that we are required to have is a tiered model of service. They receive regular ed classroom instruction at the tier 1 level, which is in the classroom. They are also required to receive a level 2 instruction, which is a more intensified instruction. Sometimes that will happen in small groups within a classroom, but sometimes based on the numbers of students that you have in the classroom, you can't always provide it. So some of our specialists are also providing support to tier 2 instruction. And then we are required to provide a tier 3, which is a very small group, less than 3, perhaps even 1-to-1 instruction for students. And we actually can provide at another time, we don't have those for you tonight, of just the numbers of students. You have a lot of students who actually receive these tier 2, tier 3 services that we are required to provide to students. And that's probably why the shift through the years moved away from having 2 people who just provided overall support to the district, now having direct service because we have that much need for that direct service. Okay. Good question.
No questions?
I'm okay for now.
I just have a general question on math. A few years ago, I was on the board and we were trying to raise our average math scores. right across the board. I think we hired a couple of math, maybe at least one math specialist, I think, in high school. Maybe in some of the other schools too. I'm just wondering, is that program still progressing? We still have the additional math or math teacher or teachers? And how have the math scores gone up? I bring that up because the other night, we were told that there's starting to be affiliations with some big companies in the state of Connecticut, like Eversource, Electric Boat, and a few other companies. And to make our towns, the town strong, our state strong, we have to have graduates that walk out with some math skills and maybe a little extra in couple other subjects, science type. And I'm just wondering how that's working out. I think if we need the math people, we should get them. I'm not a language person. Obviously, if anybody knows me, I don't know much about the English language. I could tell you a real bad story about me in high school, but math is my thing, and physics and so on. Geometry and so on. Can you just enlighten us a little bit about the history of when we picked that teacher up and how has things improved?
Yes, I'll be very brief and I'll let other Director Curriculum really speak to this. So there have been tremendous gains overall in academic performance in mathematics as well as ELA. And I would attribute it to the service model that has been in place with the supports. We knew coming back from the pandemic that students were not performing as high as they were previous to that. And we have actually, there was a part of that presentation on Monday evening. We illustrated the improvements in the student outcomes as it relates to it. So I'll let you speak further to that.
So prior to COVID, I would say math improvement was a big focus for the district. It only was intensified by that interruption to direct instruction. And we anticipated that would have a disproportionate impact on mathematics and students' performance there as opposed to literacy. And in fact, that's what we saw here in East Hampton, across the state and across the nation, that math scores were heavily impacted. Although, again, nationwide, prior to that, they had room for improvement. The staffing model that we have right now, we feel meets our needs. The 3 math specialists that I just identified are supporting students as they move through their primary, intermediate, and middle level years. And we've done a lot since 2020 to really reflect on how we were implementing math and to make changes. So in the 21-22 school year, we audited our K-5 math programming because a program that had been previously purchased years prior, the contract that the district had with that vendor was expiring. And we felt that it was a good opportunity to look at making sure we had the most high quality instructional materials in our teachers' hands. And through that audit process, we implemented a new program, Bridges in Mathematics. And we've been, very pleased with its implementation and impact. Our 3rd graders last spring, 75% met or exceeded the state expectations, putting Memorial School in the top 10% of all elementary schools in the state of Connecticut. And that's just to give you a perspective, in 21-22, 52% of our 3rd graders were meeting or exceeding the state standard. So from 52% to 3 years later, we had 75%. So we've made some significant gains. In addition to that, we have audited our middle school programming, and we have made a separate recommendation and implemented illustrative mathematics at the middle level. We changed our instructional model at center school so that students would no longer have 1 teacher all the way through 5th grade, but instead would have 2 teachers with 1 focus on math, so that we could really develop the expertise of those teachers. By 5th grade, students are doing more high-level math than they were when we were in school. And so we really want those instructors to be strong. So from how we teach math to what we're using to teach math, we have been taking action since that 2021 school year. to see a rapid improvement in our math scores. We still have work to do. Our middle level learners are not rebounding as quickly as our elementary students, which again is I would say a state and nationwide trend. But we see more of our students moving into that approaching category. We continue to provide them that additional support in that small group setting so that they can master those expectations and move forward to the high school level math that we know they need to be ready for.
One of the conversations that we had during budget deliberations with the administration is that next level of work really being at the high school level, providing those necessary interventions as they're moving through. There have been gains that have been seen with our 9th to 10th, 10th to 11th on the PSAT, and then and the outcome of the SAT. But a more intensified support similar to what is at the elementary and the middle school would be ideal. We discussed it during budget deliberations, and unfortunately, just based on the realities of where we are with the budget, proposing a position of intervention at the high school for mathematics was not going to be able to find its way into the budget. But yet here is an opportunity to double down, even as they're getting into that secondary level with more intervention. But it has been a tremendous success, the intervention model that's happening at the elementary and the middle school level in helping to give that boost that our students have needed.
Now might be a good time to bring up one of my questions.
Okay.
On page 54 of this.
Okay.
Budget book, math assessment trends.
Yeah.
The past 6 years show a disturbing drop off of scores upon reaching the middle school. What's wrong with the middle school math program? And what is being done on a classroom level to correct it?
Okay, good question. And that's, let's talk illustrative, the illustrative math.
Yeah, so as I was just saying, we did audit that math program as a result of seeing that trend. And just getting to page 54.
What did you find wrong with it? Or inadequate with it?
We felt that the previous program was not as closely aligned to the grade level standards that students need to master. And so they weren't getting adequate exposure to those expectations in order to master that content. So the program that we adapted, Illustrative Mathematics, we researched about 5 different programs. We worked with the State Department of Education to identify districts that were having not only the highest performance, but the highest growth, because we knew we were going to need to see growth pretty rapidly, and identify which districts had that kind of outcome, and then what were the high quality instructional materials that they were using. And then from there, worked with our teaching teams as well as the math specialist and our, interaction with other districts, learning about their practices, their resources. We made that decision to commit to illustrative mathematics.
When?
But
This current year?
we implemented it for the first time last year. So the audit process takes some time.
Yeah.
And we were simultaneously, because we felt that we needed to really have a response that considered every developmental stage. So if students are struggling in 8th grade, we really need to be looking all the way. How are we vertically making sure that every experience that they have is preparing them for that next step? So we started with K-5, and as in the first year of implementation of our new K-5 program, which was in 22-23, we started the audit process for 6-8. So we have students just this year at the middle school who had multiple years of bridges in mathematics, and they're now having the IM program, illustrative mathematics, we often just refer to as IM. And so we're starting to see that shift where our students are arriving at the middle school with higher scores. The teachers are seeing their readiness is in a different place. We've done a lot to emphasize our problem-solving instruction, how students are engaging with more involved problem solving that really integrates the different skills that they're learning and really requires them to transfer them to novel problems. That's a big piece of what middle schoolers need to be able to do. So it's asking them to master those skills, integrate them, and then apply and transfer them to complex multi-step problems. And so our instructional materials reflect that expectation at in what we think is a much more effective way.
And it's a system-wide approach. It's, obviously you recognize where the challenges are faced at the middle school level, but we're also seeing improvements that are happening at the elementary level. And that's the progress that will be seen as these students begin to move through the schools. So now that you have now augmented programming at that middle school level, as these students are coming through, they're coming in at a higher place and therefore will be able to perform that much higher as they move through it. Thank you.
How you doing it, but eventually I'd like to, first off, I want to thank the chart where we split up the special education and regular education. I want to thank you for that. But I have, just I didn't know how.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Raise your
okay.
hands.
Oh, good.
I
Anyway,
tried to
the
organize
chart
it,
with
but I went to hell.
the special education and the regular, I got 3 questions for each one of them. For like the special ed, how many students are in there? How many certified teachers and how many classified teachers are taking care of those students? And then do the same thing, analysis on the regular. How many students are in the regular, how many certified, and how many classified employees? Get this still down, cost curve. That's a thought. I didn't know if you had those handy, and I know it's kind of throwing it out. But thank you again for the question this
Yeah,
document.
just, it is, so if you, it's in the staffing, also in the staff, the staff report that was given. It does give,
The big book.
it gives those numbers, I'm not sure, it's a separate staffing report that actually breaks down how many staff we have at those levels. To speak,
That in this book?
it is in a separate it was in a separate staffing report, it's in the binder, yeah.
Oh,
So if you-
Didn't get that.
There were binders, yeah, so there were binders out there. Yeah, okay. So, but yes, we have the staffing numbers as it breaks down for every grade level across this district, both regular education as well as special education. But in terms of any other factors with it, we'd have to pull out the dollar amounts for each one.
Thank you, by the way, for the information in this book. There's a lot of stuff that, even those of us who have been on the Board of Finance forever have never seen before. So I'm grateful to have it on hand and presented. It's a well-designed book.
I given out this year? That's all I wonder if I had it.
No, this is one, we assigned it to Rich.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Oh, okay. I thought everyone got this.
hoarding information.
This, I guess
Where's
we
Doc?
got the Reader's Digest version.
Just so that you're aware, and I could certainly we can put together some additional binders, if that would be helpful. All of these materials that are in this binder here that Dr. Brown has are electronically under our budget page.
Right.
Oh,
And there is
online.
online.
Okay, very
So
good.
if you go into the staff, what he's referring to is there's a whole staffing report that's in there that outlines the staffing throughout the district.
Not as good as my wife, but I enjoy spreadsheets. No, and well, I mean, it tells a story.
It does.
Because when we have further discussions about it, and we realize a lot with the special ed are mandated. And, if there's some flexibility, there's not much flexibility in the special ed, but there is flexibility on that. Under the green section of that page, what impact. To that, but, when we look to the future, there's gonna be some trimming involved. I just wanna, make sure that, at least I know that it's not gonna come out of the blue, it's gonna come out of the green.
A lot of good information in this book.
Oh, I bet there is. I'm looking at that book. It's an easy read. I laughed, I cried.
So, taking that.
Thank you.
Ted's question.
Can you go over really quickly athletics? I thought I saw in one of the, some of the information that athletic transportation is going up quite a bit. I'm not against athletics, and I think it's a very big part of the whole school curriculum. So I'm just wondering, does the every year, does the cost to the parents go up because of athletics? And obviously you probably don't want to put more money into math than you do into, athletic transportation. I'm just giving you an example there. How's this work?
So yes, cost of athletics transportation continues to increase. We have not proposed an increase to the pay to participate. Some of those fees are what are used to offset those transportation costs. With it, we do have breakdowns of those figures for you. But we do not, in terms of our transportation, we have a set contract with M&J, and M&J has given us our rates. It all depends on how many of those games are gonna be away, how many of those games are gonna be home. We did put those numbers together.
I think, it isn't so much that the transportation costs have gone up, but there was, the several years that there was hardly any athletic transportation under the COVID time, so that once we got back into the swing of using the buses, whatever expenses are not covered by the participation fees has to come out of the operating budget. So that, yes, there's a funds where we pay expenses first from the parents' fees, but whatever is not covered there has to come out of the operating budget.
Now, those fees, are they going up every year because of the pressure on the budget?
I don't know.
No, we have-
Adjusted.
The last time that they went up was a couple of years ago, I'd say 23, 24.
Okay.
September 23, so that's only last school year.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And that is a big, I'll say to you, that's a big lift in school districts when you go to pay to participate. Obviously, that's not something that's very well received. But districts have moved in that direction. East Hampton has moved in that direction. We often get questions from parents as to what do we get out of it? Well, there's a lot that comes out of that. Officials, materials, resources for athletics, covering the cost of transportation, covering the cost of the coaching stipends. So we do apply those funds. It's important to have those, but that is almost like it's an added tax on the families, and we often will get some, pushback relevant to those fees. But how many in this year, we think our number, what's the total number of our, the amount that we have coming in for revenue on that? We've got that.
For this current fiscal year, about $80,000 for both high school and middle school, but the vast 3/4 of that is at the high school level.
Now, if say the basketball team goes to the state finals, you have to pay extra for transportation if it's,
Yeah.
say, in the Waterbury.
That's where those, when we talk about the costs, the rates go up year by year with our bus contracts, but also it's the games, where are these games happening? And if they do get into the championships, and we have good teams here in East Hampton, a good athletics program. And as a result of that, yes, there's additional transportation costs that if the season ended at the last game, because you didn't get tournament play, you'd have less to expend. But a lot of our teams, as you have heard, they do quite well in the tournament.
Okay, I'm going next, because we gotta move this along.
Okay.
Quick question. What does the deficit look like right now for this current year? And am I correct in thinking that a portion of that is tied to what the state did with how long you have to support a student? It was 18. And now it's, what age is that? 22. So I think we all got caught by surprise when they made that change, so. I just want to make sure that people realize that the deficit, part of it, it was completely not in our control.
When did that happen?
Yeah,
When did that change, that law change? Before last year's budget or after?
that was actually 2 years ago, when it moved to 22, as opposed to 21. Your deficit, we have given reports, we gave, last tri-board meeting, we were slightly, less than about $1 million. We believe, obviously, between now and the end of this year, that will continue to reduce. We were gonna do projections to our next finance, subcommittee meeting. We do not have our next projection ready for you here this evening, and I don't wanna miss you, but
What was the last one?
The last one was just over 800,000, and I would say it's more, it's going in a better direction, closer to 600,000.
and I can explain a big piece to this is that, right now, as it stands, that $40 million agreement that was reached between the governor and the legislature has now, where we were worried about what we were gonna get for excess costs, and we were giving you worst case scenario. If they didn't even meet the 68% that you received last year. If it all, comes out, depends on how the demand is gonna be, we could, as a district, see an excess of $100,000 more in excess costs than we were planning to get, as we were predicting the deficit in January. So that's all very good news. Where those reductions are going to then help bring us to at least some lighter amount as we approach the end of the school year. We will have the next fiscal projection. We'll get this done in the next week or so, but I do want to have an opportunity to be able to share it with the board, share it with you all, so that you're aware of where we're positioning. We were very happy with the excess cost change for this year. It's a good, that's a good thing for us. And on top of it, just to say that as is written in this budget book here, this really provides kind of explanation as to where the deficit was. So in this book, if you go to page 11, it gives explanation to that deficit that was building into this year. And then in Monday evening's presentation that was given to you, there's really an outline of what's factoring into fiscal year 26. That it's partly deficit, it's partly, the health insurance rebate, but it gives some context as to the situation that you're in. So much of it out of the control of the Board of Finance, the Board of Ed, the Town Council. It really, it's an unfortunate set of circumstances as it relates to this, but obligations that are not being met from the state are really what are creating this dynamic in communities. So with that, we'll get the most recent deficit update for you, but it's looking better as every day approaches towards the end of the school year.
Okay. A quick question on your dues and fees that you have in the budget. Is there anything that you absolutely don't need, or can this be focused on what you get the best bang for your buck rather than all of them?
So
is that an area that could be kind of turned down? And because I know from my prior life that when you have all these associations, a lot of times you're just getting repetitive information. You hear it with this group, you hear it with that group. So is there a way to turn that down?
Yeah, so, the amounts that we're talking about that are in here, we're still, obviously unaware of really how significant of a reduction that, you would like to see from the Board of Ed budget. The dollar amounts that are in these dues and fees are just so minimal to begin with, but there are organizations that, and I'll give an example of one. So the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education is one of those that they're right now, it is at 12,000. Where are we at with the book?
Well, that's the sports.
Yeah.
Accreditation.
Yeah, so we are caved, and I want to explain this to you, is that the most significant one that happens to be in here is the board's affiliation with the Connecticut Associations of Boards of Education. We were at the Capitol last week on an event that CABE was the group that was sponsoring for us. So we could take a look at different ones to see if perhaps we aren't going to do that or become a member with a particular agency, but it disconnects us from some of the work that helps to bring us a voice when needed.
again, and you know, I realize it is just 52,000, but if you can get 10 over here, we've already gotten 100 that's coming out from the reading. Drops in the bucket, they do tend to add
They
up.
will add up. They
So
will add up.
if you can just come up with what you feel you're gaining the most value from.
Okay.
So rather than the entire list, maybe it's 4 or 5 that really are, you really gain a lot from. Because especially, I know in my old life, in the student loan industry, there were more associations you could be involved with. You know, you had the local, the national, you had the districts. So.
Generally, they're all state of Connecticut, or the only, except for the
Yeah, I
private.
realize, I can tell
Yeah,
from reading the
it's not-
list, it's all pretty much Connecticut, but the
Yeah.
point is that an area that we could shave off some money? I'm set.
How many retirements did you have in 24-25 school year?
This current school,
No, this current.
we, at this point in time, only this current school year, meaning for the upcoming fiscal year, or
No.
coming into this year. I can't speak to how many retirements we actually had for last year.
I would have to get back to you, it's 5-ish, or it's in that, it's in the single digit area. But we'll get that to you.
And,
Have you had any retirements so far this
yeah,
year?
so, we, just received notice on one classified staff member, on a retirement. That is the only retirement that we have been informed of for the upcoming school year.
Do they have a deadline to?
They do, by collective, it's not a deadline, it's that if they give us notice by a certain point in time. That, based on the collective bargaining agreement, there is, some degree of the factor of payback relevant to some of the things within the collective bargaining agreement. However, we have not received those, at this point in time.
So what's the time frame?
It's a very small amount, it's a extra $5 on any sick days.
Not the dollars, but what is the cutoff date?
Well, no, there really is no, the cutoff, they only has a $5 difference on on their sick bank if they have one, so that there is not a date. There's not a
It's
date.
the March date.
So, yeah, so by March is when we would expect to hear from them. If they were going to want this degree of reimbursement, because it being so small. And a lot of them not having made that decision at this point in time, we do not have anybody that has notified us that they are going to retire, other than one that we have just gotten most recently. Districts that do offer larger incentives for retirement ultimately get notification sooner. We have had a very small one here, so they're less inclined to let us know this far ahead of schedule as to whether they're gonna retire. There could be some that are considering it. You know, we had talked about that with turnover factor. We budgeted a turnover factor with the anticipation that there will be retirements that are coming. But unfortunately, in this moment, do not have any.
So out of 5 that retired for this present school year, they were all replaced.
Position wise, yes, if we were to look at it in the overall FTEs, the answer to your question would be yes. You know, based on the numbers of FTEs that are in the district, they were replaced coming into the district. That was the BC, there was a BCBA that ended up moving into the classified realm that we never moved into the teacher realm. But that was separate, not included in that FTE count. So if you were to look at that FTE count, it has remained constant from year to year. We did not reduce all positions out.
I see all the magnet schools and the costs. And perhaps Do you have any children now that are going to RAM, to that industrial, program at RAM?
We do not have any that are in the, that are.
What happened to that?
RAM has to have available seats. So if their class is filled, then there aren't seats for us to take advantage of, but we also have a partnership with Goodwin University. Which has a full manufacturing program as well,
Is what university?
Goodwin
Oh,
in
Goodwin.
East Hartford.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's called the eCamp program. And so it's a early manufacturing experience. And actually, we were just there to tour it recently. And it is for seniors, and we have 2 students placed there right now who would have taken technology education courses at our high school and really exhausted that opportunity. They can go over to Goodwin and take courses that we don't offer. The courses that they take at Goodwin are early college experience courses, but they also get apprenticeships. So they end their senior year with both college credit and apprenticeship hours, and very often that's a paid experience in their senior year. So where RAM allowed them to take advantage of that coursework, this Goodwin partnership really gives us a little bit more for those students, where they get the coursework, they can get college credit for those who are thinking that's the track they want to go. But if you're looking for a partnership that's going to give you an entrance into a career opportunity, it's great. I mean, they have partnerships with manufacturing businesses throughout the Hartford region that maybe produce things that then feed into larger environments like Pratt or Sikorsky or, other kinds of electric boat. And they're learning how to build and manufacture those products. And we had a senior who graduated in 2024 who moved right into the workplace. I ran into him when he was here voting, and he was telling me all about it. And so that's a program that we have active right now, and in many ways has a high value. It's not just the coursework that they were getting at RAM, but it has these other components. And as we know, those apprenticeship hours, the earlier you can start those, that's great if you're looking at that career entry point.
Now, Rich, you gonna talk about AP classes?
No.
No. So it seems to me that East Hampton High School has a lot of AP classes. And we heard how valuable they are because it reduced a family's tuition in college. And in my opinion, that's not your job to reduce families, for our taxpayers to foot the bill for all these AP teachers. And the classes are usually often very small. So that a student's college tuition can be reduced. I think there's other ways to do it. And I was reading an editorial in Wall Street Journal just today, actually, about the digital opportunities that are out there for instead of having a student in a classroom, the kids can take these, use these digital opportunities to get the same or better experience. And we've talked to, and Tim, I know you're new, but we've talked to Paul many times about this, and had always been rejected, but I would love it if you guys would take another look at this.
Yeah, so, and I want to be able to speak to this, and I am, I understand what you're saying, is the obligation of our school district to be able to provide these opportunities for our students. We know that our students and our families want to see these programs in place. It's not just about the tuition. I mentioned that because when we're talking in terms of what our taxpayers in this community are going to potentially benefit from, they're going to significantly benefit, and that is true. And I look at it in a broader context of the fact that, that savings that they have likely is going to show up in the economy of this community in some other way. But it's also about providing a comprehensive high school program. The number of classes that we have for advanced placement or dual enrollment parallel with what all of your neighboring, and I share this, and I want to just continue to go back to this perspective of other districts. We are needing to offer a comprehensive program that mirrors what other districts are offering. We want the best for our students in East Hampton. That matches what other students are getting in neighboring districts.
About making it better.
And then the reality being that if we don't have these programs, we could be spending taxpayer dollars to send these students to the programs that do have those, such as magnet schools. And so it's a balancing act. I hear what you're saying is that, do we have to offer all these? The volume of students that I had shared with you, that just in the past 4 years alone, just in AP, where they went from 112 students to 132 students that are taking it. And the high success rate of those students taking those courses are showing that there is a high degree of interest. You start to walk those back. And that's where I think we're going to see that there'll be expenses that we'll be paying in other realms. And I would rather have our students here at East Hampton High School. And, but I understand what you're saying. But this is the trend, and this is it, and I, would say to you, look at some of the other programs of studies of neighboring schools. I could get those for you, and you're gonna see that you're no different of a place where these other districts are. And your per pupil expenditure to be able to make that happen, getting to that per pupil expenditure. Your per pupil expenditure to make that happen is still in the very middle of the state of Connecticut. It's not as if you're paying higher just to be able to provide those opportunities.
Budget, we can't stand it anymore. These taxpayers are hurting, and they're gonna, when you think of, like what, $250,000 to $300,000 home, the taxes are gonna go up this year about $900. On top of the $800 last year, and that goes on forever. What's it gonna be next year? So that's what I'm saying. Let's look at some cost saving. Forget about doing what every other school system does. Let's do something better.
I think, in the conversation, I think it's East Haddam. My understanding is for these AP, you have to be kind of certified to teach them. I believe East Haddam, they have an issue, they don't have enough teachers certified. That could be a revenue source. We have technology. So those are things that I'd like us to see if we can get some revenue out of it. Plus, it would kind of help with the class sizes as well. That we don't have, a class size of 5 where we could have 15 if we could figure out how to hook up with East Haddam, and that, and my understanding is they're having to go through some hoops to have these AP courses available for their kids.
Yeah, so what ended up happening, and you and I had talked about this in the past, is that districts used to do what was called virtual programming that existed between two schools, where a teacher would be in one school, the students would be in an alternate school. Post-COVID, there was a law that was put on the books that did not allow for the instruction of students remotely. And that's what's created this complication, because there were some successful programs where students in neighboring districts could work together, because you would have a teacher who was certified, for example, to do AP US history in one school, and they would be able to log in from one school to the other. And unfortunately, that model has been upended. But, and of course, we would love to have East Haddam students be able to come here to take it, be tuition-based students for us, because we do have those offerings. But,
No,
I think
we're not gonna solve it here. The point is, we should be looking for other ways other than sitting, in the classroom to find a way to generate some revenue for other districts that don't have what we have here.
Right, so one thing if I can make this, is that we continue to seek out ways of bringing more revenue. And I just next week, we have a meeting set up with a neighboring district about having a shared regionalized program that once again could bring additional savings to this district. So we're continuing to pursue every avenue that we can to see if there are ways of being able to bring further cost savings. The situation you're in is just like the situation everybody else is in. I just don't want you to think we were just sitting idle and not looking at ways of doing
No,
it.
no.
We're definitely gonna, do whatever we can to make that happen.
Can I just add, Bridget, if it's okay, I just wanted to add that we do use some, virtual high school is a tool that we use. Alana, I know you mentioned that some districts are using virtual tools, and we do that. We have a very limited amount of seats, so that a very specialized course that we would not be able to offer, students can access in that manner. So we have looked at solutions to reduce the need to have a separate course for a specialized need. We have really looked at how to reduce barriers. So sometimes classes were small in the past because students may have thought, am I really an AP student? And we want all students to challenge themselves at that level. We have families that ask about really wanting more opportunities at the sophomore year, which we don't offer currently at our high school, but at the junior and senior year, those course sizes are going up because we have reduced some of the barriers that students may have felt in the past would have kept them out of an AP class. So AP Calc, for example, had 19 students in it this year. So we do see those class sizes extending. And the standardization of that curriculum is important for students when they're looking to move beyond our high school, because AP Calc, for example, is the same curriculum. And so for students who are pursuing college, universities are looking at that because they know what that curriculum is and what that grade means. And so those are some of the things that we are already looking at, those issues, and trying to address them.
Okay, we haven't talked about the elephant in the room.
Wait. We have two
Oh,
people
go
here.
ahead.
You forgot.
Tim, but further to Alana's question, I brought this up on Monday regarding the two planned retirements that we talked about. It was about $160,000 that you put in the budget for that. If those two, hypothetically, if those two retirements don't happen, is that $160,000 to getting care? That's the number you taught on. I wouldn't hold you to it. Would that appear on the unanticipated expense list next year?
Yeah, so anytime you put a turnover factor in there, there's risk associated with that. You take your historical information through the years based on what has been the likely amount of turnover that you have. It isn't exclusive to just retirements. Retirements make up the biggest portion of those. And obviously, where we are knowing that if we're struggling to meet that perhaps we have to take a look at any position of retirement as to whether or not we're going to replace that position, or we're going to phase it out through attrition, because that is a large number to try to get to. I'm confident in what Karen has projected based on the historicals, that turnover factor will be met. I will always come back, as I have done in my previous districts, in my fall reports to the Board of Finance and in our tri-board, to let you know how we made out with that turnover factor over the course of a summer, because that gives you the clear indication of how much of it was based on turnover at the end of the year and what adjustments we've been able to make. I've always shared that because what it does is it helps to keep you familiarized with the dynamics of staffing that are coming and going out of a school district over a period of a year. Additional savings towards that turnover factor are accrued during the school year itself. We may have teachers that go out on long-term leaves of absences that therefore we may pick up because the teacher that we backfill that role with may come in at a lesser cost, or for the first 40 days, they're paid at a per diem substitute rate of pay. 40 as of day 41st, they are recognized as a teacher under the Teacher Tenure Act. Therefore, they have to receive teacher pay, but there's a degree of savings that's associated with it. So you do see over the course of a year funding that helps to meet that turnover factor. Of course, you try to make the biggest amounts of it those summer months of transition through your retirements. And it's a number that we will keep you updated on. That's how we're doing it. But to your initial statement is, if we don't make it, does that create an unanticipated element of a deficit? The answer would be yes. However, I do want to go on the historicals that you have had in the past that have suggested that that's a number that we will likely be able to meet. Okay?
And another question too, I know we touched on about the $250,000 health insurance rebate. 1 year, last year was a savings, now it's an expense. Can you kind of explain what happened there? I know we touched on it on Monday, but if you could.
Yeah,
expand on it again.
So, and I'll let my health insurance expert really give more details. I will give you my piece to it, but. So at the end of last fiscal year, same situation as Brent, it was very difficult budget moment. Some movement was made with the health insurance company, with the carrier. East Hampton Public Schools moved into a group. And as a result of moving into that group, Anthem provided a $250,000 1-year rebate. That money was applied to the health insurance bottom line, which therefore artificially dropped it from what it would have been had that $250,000 not been in place. Okay, and as a result of it, now we have to make up for raising that bottom line that was artificially dropped for the right reasons in the moment of trying to get the budget down. And some movement that was made. I don't know if you want to add a little bit more to that. But.
I have a handy handout for that. Begins. Thank you, Mary, for helping out here. I can send it to you down that way. The first page of this, I just summarized, we've made a change every year for the last 3 years for health insurance. But it's because of what happened. I have an example on the second page to show the actual rates for a family, just so that you can see how they are changed over this series from this current year to next year. We have the contract that we have with Anthem refers to a rate for a family this year, 24-25 is $37,750. But because of the credit rebate that we received, the actual net cost for a family is about $1,000 less. And this is the gross premium before the employee share. So our contract had a limited how much they could raise the rate, which was 11%. So that the difference between the current contractual rate and the maximum contractual rate is 11%. However, in our budget, it's really 15% because we reduced the budget, as Tim said, for the one-time premium credit that Anthem gave us to switch to them. So to avoid this increase, we are switching again to the high deductible health plan. So instead of an increase, we actually are going to have a decrease from the current net rate. And down on the second line, I show after the employer cost, the net cost to the employer, and that even after providing a 50% contribution to an employee's HSA account, we'll have over a 9% decrease on a per person basis. What happened to us this year is we also had additional people enroll beyond what we expected, and we're hopeful. We have some built-in amount. I did then on the third page show how we arrived at the exact number that's in the budget for health insurance of $5,579,843, that we are building in a net withdrawal factor because of moving to the high deductible health plan. But
If I'm understanding you correctly, there would not be a $250,000 unexpected expense next year. Or at least there shouldn't be.
unless we have even additional people enroll, but we're hearing, we're starting to inform and work with our folks to make this change for July 1st. And so far, we're hearing they're more incentivized to look at what their options are for their family.
And lastly, for you, Tim, Paul had a weekly newsletter that he'd come out with every Monday and then coffee clatches on Fridays. I don't know what your plan is for anything like that, but unless you're doing something, I'm just dropping off the emailing list, but hopefully you create something like that yourself.
Yes, so, I don't know how many, I'm sure you don't want to get to 4 o'clock in the morning phone calls for the snow days. But I do provide a district update, try to get one out every other week. I will, include your name on those. I don't know who wants to be on those, but I send out a district update, to, the community as it relates to school-based matters. And I do the coffee hours, those do get posted. There's a calendar of those that are on our district calendar. Haven't had a lot of attendees for those, but I do make myself available for those as well.
I'll be an attendee, how about that?
That sounds great.
You're welcome.
You and I will have coffee together, sure.
All right, my last and final question. I'm shutting you down. You've been waiting, what question up here. I've been waiting. I'm going first, then I'll give you. Okay. As I said, there is the elephant in the room. Nobody has mentioned it or talked about it. We've had a significant decrease in enrollment. Significant since 2021. 170. Is that what you're going to talk about? Then go ahead. But this is the last discussion. Yeah, right.
I've got a couple comments and then some line items things. I apologize. I thought every member had one of these books, so I referenced page numbers. So my apologies for that. Couple comments first. Page 5, I noticed that teacher raises were 3.5%, not including the steps, the increments. That was far above other professionals and employees in the system. So that is one of the drivers of our inflationary budget there too. With our decrease of 40 students projected for the upcoming school year, that gives us an opportunity to reduce two classroom teachers in grade 1 and grade 2. It would result in classes of about 21 students, which is below the 23 number that we previously sought out as reasonable. And it would be similar to the current grades in 3, 4, and 5. So that's something that may be considered. Getting into some specifics, I'll skip the things that have already been mentioned. Page 18, we have a list of the student enrollments. And we have a number of grade 12 students that will be graduating from the special ed VOAG, VOAG, 4 magnet, and 1 learning center, for a total of 10 students that will be graduating. And moving up in grade 11 is only 6. So I would expect some kind of budgetary reduction feasible there, but I don't see it.
I just need, if I could ask clarity on that point again, just so that I understand how the factoring there. Okay.
On page 18, October 1 enrollment.
Sorry, I thought you were looking actually in the staff report. I apologize.
I'm in the
The overall enrollment. Okay.
All right. So if you look down page 12,
Yeah.
all the students that will be graduating from these outsourced programs. Next year, it appears as though we'll have a reduction of at least 4 outplacements there, comparing grades 11 and grade 12. So I would expect some kind of reduction in the budget for that. Not seeing it.
So actually, I'll let you ask your questions and then I can respond to them as you are.
Okay.
I know you're on a line of thought, so I'll let you continue with the line of thought.
As far as each one is an individual line item, so if you could respond to them individually, it'd probably make more sense than
Okay.
holding up.
Okay, so the first thing, just in terms of the increases and what's pushing, and I know you made mention of this, and I have to say this, Dr. Brown, so The collective bargaining agreement, is what you're referring to. And I
Correct.
just want to be very, very clear on this, that, I understand that philosophically, people could look at it and say, this is a significant amount. Collective bargaining, is subject to a bigger picture than just exclusively within this community. Our increase, is a 12.6% over the course of 3 years. That includes wage and step. The average across the 60+ districts that I was sharing with you on Monday evening, the average across those districts is over 13.5%. Our teachers did settle on an agreement that was 1% less than was across the state of Connecticut. Arbitration, as you know, can be very expensive. And there isn't the arbitrator, if this had gone to arbitration, wouldn't have sided in the favor of this district. And would have cost taxpayers a lot of money to just get that as a response. So the other part to it has a lot to do with the health insurance. And I want to make note of that because as we talk about staffing and, we bargained in good faith, with our educators. Not everybody ever gets anything that they want out of it. We all come to the table. We don't get everything we ask for. Our certified staff don't get what they ask for out of it, but you have to come to some degree of compromise in all of this. The health insurance savings that we have, that have resulted were as a result of what occurred with that collective bargaining agreement that has brought an additional $500,000 or would have cost us $500,000 more had that not been agreed to. So just bigger picture, I hear what you're saying about the rates. And the larger picture of it all is that we as a district, and we, obviously we're grateful to the way that this positioned itself to our faculty for the agreement that was brought forward. But I know that's a tough pill to swallow, but it is something that every district has been seeing. And like I said, the numbers are there that support that.
Right, but the collective bargaining is a circle shoot. If we raise ours, then the next town uses that as a reference to raise theirs, and it continues around in a vicious circle. So yes, individually, it's just notice that the teachers do have a 3.5%, not including the steps, that is far above the other professionals and employees that are dealing with a 2.4% rate.
Well, what I want to say to that is that when you net out the health insurance
Yep.
and the wage increases, it's 2.84, 2.59, 2.68. Because of the fact that there was such a give on the health insurance part to it. It's significant. And I think it's that you have to take the whole picture into account with all of it. As it relates to it, I recognize where you are with this, but I just want to make sure that I let everybody recognize that, there's been a significant amount of cost avoidance as it relates to, that agreement that was settled.
Yep, that's clear.
Okay, the
Could
second,
I also, there is on the, some of the items that you referred to, they were reflected in the budget, the VOAG, a regular ed tuition is reduced for the reduction in, students. And, the magnet school students also were looked at as, on an individual case-by-case basis with the current enrollments and, reflect what is
It is
actually
reflected
expected.
in
Yeah,
those
yeah.
figures. Thank you.
okay.
As far as the graduation, okay, we dealt with that. Page 27. We have 2 paras being moved into the operating budget. Are those the same intervention specialists as mentioned in the
Yes,
special ed
yes,
case 5? They
yes,
are.
yeah, they're in technicality, interventionists by the state are referred to as paraeducators, so yes, that is one and the same.
Okay. very
Okay,
good.
yes.
Page 34.
That
The
was,
other transportation listed for purchase services is double. It's 106% change. Can you explain that, please?
That is related to, it's athletic, transportation and the need, to whatever's, again, what I said before about whatever's not covered by the athletic participation fees ends up coming into the operating budget. And if you look back, I don't know, you're not seeing the, in my,
the roll up core.
my actual detail lines, if you look back to what we really paid in just last year, which is the audited final numbers, these lines for next year are reasonable in relation to what was actually paid. And
This is your roll up costs. So she's actually, I paid 16 of 24.
Okay.
Okay.
Page 35. There references the need for unexpended Board of Ed funds account. We already have that. That was set up previously a couple of years ago. That any unexpended funds in the operating expense could be set aside for future needs of the Board of Ed. So that is something that already exists.
I guess, once again, if I need just clarification on where you are in here with this. So you're on page 35 of the budget book.
Page 35.
Yeah.
Let me see. On the top, second bullet point, collaborate with the Board of Finance on non-lapsing account for unexpended Board of Ed funds. We have that.
Yeah, this is just continuing to look at that account as a future objective that we continue to keep that at the forefront of conversation. It's not necessarily as a means of proposing it as something new. It's that this is just a future objective, that this should continue to be a conversation.
Okay,
So
I
long as
want
there's-
us to be aware that it already exists.
So long, yeah, that's a good point to make, and and that's the collaborative element of having conversations, if we get to a point where there are revenues and not deficits at the end of the fiscal year.
On page 56, there's a discussion about the SATs. And one of the points it makes is that the scores might be a little low because the average students are not retaking the exams. Oh, I don't agree with that because the above average students would get a significant boost by taking the exam a second time. That's a proven thing. And what about the below average students not showing up to take the exam?
Yeah.
So I don't agree with the argument that it's printed there. And the use of an SAT comparison is faulty anyway, because several times the test has been changed. Most significantly, early last year, when according to the Washington Post, the New York Post, and the Heritage Foundation, the test has been significantly dumbed down. So it's apples and oranges.
Okay, so share the article with me. It's an entirely different type of a test. It's a computer adaptive test. The rigor of that test has changed significantly, and that's the reason why colleges and universities are struggling in this moment, based on what were the outcomes of the previous year's SATs compared to the scores of, there were many students, and I'm going to speak to you as a father of a student who's graduating this year. Because there was such an inflated score to SATs, your colleges and universities that were once test optional for the past few years that are moving away from test optional are now looking at what their previous scores were and setting that this is the average to get into this college and university. These most recent scores are significantly lower. It's a very different test. You're very correct in that. It's a computer adaptive test. But the universities, based on the previous year's average, are struggling with the messaging. And there are a lot of students who are not submitting their scores for fear that it didn't meet the 1300 or the 1400 when the national averages have greatly reduced. As far as it being a dumbed down test, I'd like to see the article as it relates to it. The performance levels of students on this most recent administration of the test is significantly lower statewide, but also national as compared to it. So that I just want to, you know, and having been, you know, somebody who's dealing with this right now in looking at these scores. In terms of students taking it, and I want Mary to just touch base on this, we are required now, back in the day, 11th graders used to have to take a statewide assessment. Several years ago, the state moved away from that, and the 11th grade assessment that the state now uses is the SAT score, is the SAT. There is a test day, an SAT test day, that the state requires all students to take. That is in the,
Yeah, it's gonna be in April.
It's in April.
This year.
So what ends up happening is your students who are very strong academically, and I'm gonna tell you, I know you disagree with this, but I'm the one who is seeing it yearly and seeing it in other districts. Those students that score extremely high in that fall, they're not showing up the day in school that the SAT requirements to be in the spring. So there is a disparity.
It's foolish.
Those, well, regardless of what you're saying with it, I'm not saying it is for me, I wouldn't be doing that. I'm gonna be going for the best score that I can get. But the reality is so when we look at our average SAT scores, some of your highest performers aren't in there because they had already taken the test and scored extremely high with it, in the fall.
All right. Moving on to the next item, page 73. Technology capital request, East Hampton High School smart boards. Are all the high school smart boards failing?
So, we started a replacement plan where we, are doing a building at a time. This next year, we're finishing the high school. We did replace 8 boards this year because that's all the funding we were given. But yes, they're failing at a very quick rate. So this is to have the technology, the smart boards that are remaining in the high school replaced with the same technology we put in all the other rooms over the last 3.5 years.
So you have 31 listed to be replaced.
That's right.
They're all failing about the same, okay?
Yep.
Under the budget report tag. The athletics at Memorial School. The posted $3,000 is a new request.
It's a couple of clubs that were added in the, over the past couple of years, and they actually did exist this current year, and it was not, the person they didn't put it in the budget line.
So this is new athletic clubs. at
But
Memorial.
they're happening now, and it's just they did not get added into the budget line for 2025. So, I'll take responsibility for missing the $3,000 in this year's line, but I got it in next year.
Okay, this is after classes
During school.
during school,
Cheetah Club and.
so it doesn't fall into physical education.
Well, the account is titled athletics, but it's also activities and clubs. So they're really clubs that are occurring during the day.
Okay. The page 2 of the budget tab. School media services at the middle school. It's a,
Okay, that's the library media program. I'm assuming if it's.
it's a 40% increase.
That was. That job was added, it's in the budget for 2025 at 75,000. But in reality, a teacher was transferred, that was at the top step into that role. But it
So
was-
this is a new position?
In this current year, it was presented to you a year ago in the
Yeah.
budget. And it was planned at a lower level higher, but that wasn't feasible.
The teacher who was transferred into that position, the position they were in was not filled,
Was not what?
not filled.
We'll see that.
So we kept
The numbers.
that employee and transferred them to the media.
Yes, but you would see it on, the page before page one in the, there's, there's a reduction
Another line.
in another line for the person who was transferred.
The teacher carries a certification and there's an opening in a position for which they're certified for, they can apply for that position. And so that candidate moved into an open position and we did not fill their previous position.
The one they left, right?
Right, so it's just.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Page 16 of the budget, we're still on that. It's a code 5530, communications. Don't we have 24,000 pointed to that from the capital?
These communications are the ongoing costs for using the phones, not putting new phones, and it's just use the bills for using phones, using fiber. It's just operational
Sounds like the
dollars,
fixed costs.
cell phones that we're
relevant to-
required to have by contract, those sort of things.
Whereas that capital.
The
is a-
landlines, right?
Is
The
a
landlines.
replacement, right, whereas the capital is more of a replacement of the devices. These are your fixed costs.
Outgoing expenses.
Correct, correct.
All right.
Can I go back to something you had asked earlier, because we never touched on it now?
I'm sorry?
I'd like to go back to one thing that you had mentioned
Sure.
earlier, because we never touched on it.
Okay.
So, and I just, this has to go with the second grade classroom, because you're
Yes.
pointing out just in terms of enrollment. So, we did reduce an elementary teacher. Okay,
Right.
and that fits into the bigger
Grade
picture
three.
of it, right, so. With that being the case, I understand what you're saying about the class sizes itself. But I do want us to go to you've seen just in the performance reports about the fact that our third grade has showed demonstrated improvement. And that's based on the current model that you have with the numbers of students that are in your classrooms. Those are the areas where you start to make decisions. You're gonna potentially see outcomes that are gonna be adverse to the direction that we're looking to head as it relates to it. I also want to look at, I also want you to understand, based on the needs of the students that we have within these classrooms. And I will spend time with you. I know you have had questions about, and I will, as you have met with me already this year. I will meet with you further to talk as it relates to staffing levels and the needs of students that we're seeing within these classrooms. Your average class sizes at the elementary level, albeit I know you feel differently about it. I would not want to see larger numbers of students, both for the purposes of academic growth, nor for the social emotional needs and the challenges that we are faced with our students that are within these classrooms. Albeit recognizing that where there are areas in the future to make further reductions, obviously that is how this budget will adjust, and recognizing year over year, any reductions that are made to staffing have to be done very thoughtfully, because you have to have a very clear picture of the students involved, what programs, and the impact of those programs. But the elementary teacher that we have reduced had to do with enrollment. That was part of that whole thought.
Oh, there was a
process.
class bump there.
There was a bubble.
Yes.
There was a bubble. But that is something that, we will continue to fully explore as we move forward. But those class sizes, as you mentioned in second grade,
That is the year that's leading right. So first grade, I just to give kind of reference here, kindergarten, first grade, high development literacy. That's where you are focused in on literacy development. And it's those foundational skills that you're hitting, whether it be the literacy or the mathematics. But if you don't get those, by the time they come into middle school, you're not going to see those changes in student outcomes because you really have to develop that going through. You made wonderful progress with third grade with your performance in mathematics. We start to increase those class sizes with the needs of kids these days. They're not going to get the service that we want them to be able to get.
When you have class sizes of 17 students, though, we're getting into class sizes that are really not efficient, from a budgetary point of view. We have reached agreements over the years. We certainly don't want class sizes above 23. That we had class sizes a couple of years ago, 26. We had a class size 27, I believe, at one point. And we realized that that was just not feasible. That's not what we wanted for our children. But when we start getting down to 16, 17, and I'll address a couple other class sizes in another minute or two.
So Dr. Brown, I don't disagree with you, and I've had this conversation with the board. I think that there are thresholds, and 16s and 17s aren't what we're talking about right now.
Yes.
Class sizes are a bit higher than that. They're hovering right below 20.
Have an enrollment decrease of another.
You better
40
believe it.
students.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, and I support that, and that's been no different than I have operated. These are obviously decisions that we leave to the board to make based on recommendations to the administration, but just as you saw it with the fourth grade for this year, that pattern wouldn't change. And I think I already know where you're gonna head next to it, but I'll let you ask the question first, and then we'll talk further about that.
Oh, okay, let me go through a couple of things before we get to that. Page 18, the academic recognition, the fee for that has doubled. Come on. We all know the honor roll. Let me just mention honor roll, and that has its own ramifications. When the last time I counted, there were 8 seniors that walked through the door that weren't on the honor roll, and what did they have to do to not be on the honor roll? So, but that was a while ago. The count may have changed.
And
I don't believe so.
this account is used at the high school for a variety of things related to graduation and award ceremonies. And what I was using for next year's budget was looking back at what we paid in 2024. And if I could further go back to individual school lines, we actually, to be fair, really worked these over with the buildings for months before getting them into this final budget. So, we had extensive meetings and pre-meetings, and we went through all of these before putting these numbers into the budget. So I feel very strongly that the numbers that are in any building line, we really looked these over during our very early in the budget process.
Okay. Moving on, page 19, is said at the middle school, a 300% increase. It's just the 4th line from the bottom of the page.
No, wait a second. It's the, again, this was a specific, there was a specific request that we reviewed with the school in the course of this program. It could be a particular program that they requested, or it's just supplies that they felt that they needed. Well, I can get back to you with why we did
I
that.
think if I recall, and this is where this is really getting into the details of it all. I have a feeling that this may have been some of the unified equipment for adaptive PE elements that were at request, if I recall. we did spend a lot of time with the administrators, Karen had alluded to do it, really take it from a school-based model so that our administrators are taking the ownership of their school budgets and obviously hearing where our thinking is regarding areas where reductions may need to be made. There was something in particular that drove that, and I do think it had to do with adaptive PE equipment for high needs students. And I think there were some elements of the health programming that was not being met, the body safe element of it that we were perhaps looking at, but we'll get a detail for you in regards to exactly what that is within that particular line.
Okay, we're not talking a lot of money, but it's a.
It's not, but I hear what you're saying. This gets to Bridget's comment about it a little bit, with, the difference.
Page 20, the business ed at the high school is an increase of 675%. I understand the state mandate for the new financial literacy course. But can you explain why it's 675%?
We needed to include a textbook that did not end up in the curriculum line. But it is a book, it's a new textbook.
Okay.
Specifically for the personal finance course.
Yes. Under the tab staffing report, page 47. Mobile device and web. Could you explain that position?
Sure, this is, if you could please, this is.
So the title of the position is mobile device coordinator and webmaster. We have a paraprofessional who works for the IT department who's stationed at the high school, who her desk is in the library at the high schools. Mobile device coordinator, she manages the Chromebook one-to-one program at the high school, including providing devices on testing days to make sure that all of the assessment goes smoothly there. And she's also the district webmaster. So all of the stuff that gets posted to our website pretty much goes through her to make sure that everything's updated and modifying it. And every year we do rollovers of all the information, the budget page that I alluded to before, that's all taken care of by her.
And her position is split between the high school and
Protect department.
Yes, because so her desk is in the library at the high school, so
Yes.
while she's doing those duties, she's also assisting in the library to check out books, to shelve books, return books, repair books. So it's kind of a split position.
all right.
And just, so you know, that is a classified position, salary wise, that is
Yes.
not a certified role.
Oh, of course. Yeah. If we could go back now under that same tab to page 15. Class size.
Okay.
If you knew I was gonna hit on this.
Well, I've been
Because we have
hearing a lot of
classes
rumors
with
here, yeah.
one student in it.
Yeah.
We have another class with 2 students. Another with 3 students, a couple with 4 students. And a couple with 5 students. Now. That seems more like a scheduling issue. Than any other explanation I can come up with. I would think that you'd be able to, like Music 6, there are 5 pods, so if I'm using the correct terminology, 5 groups of students that rotate around the middle school. Certainly, you could put those 1 or 2 students into the same pod or circulating group, so that you would have 6 students in a class rather than 2 separate classes of 4 students and 1 with 2 students or so.
Yeah, there's a reason for this, and you're not the first member of the Board of Finance who's looked at a staffing report that has made this question. I'll let you go first with the explanation, then I will follow back up with it.
So that particular teacher is teaching band and choral lessons. And so in the Power School schedule, it's going to reflect their grade level. So if I'm the one student in grade 8 who has band at that time, I'm listed in a separate category, but I might be meeting at the same time as other students. So the staffing report doesn't reflect the dynamic nature of the schedule because it's going to show that student as a 7th grade band student, even though they may be scheduled at the same time as students in 8th grade band because they are in fact a 7th grade band student. So they're,
But you have one teacher associated with that particular class.
right, but if you look at how many classes she has, a teacher wouldn't have that many sections, at any given time. This is just showing the breakout of the students who are enrolled to her,
Instrumental music
into
program.
her
so,
instruction,
Yeah.
but they are not necessarily grouped in this way, which is a unique feature of how the music program works at that building. But we could, for example, pull a sample day to show you how many students she actually sees at once. So this is just, she is not meeting with that student one-on-one.
Yeah, so
It's
it's,
just the only seventh grade band student that she's seeing at that time.
yeah,
Who
so.
might be in with others.
And
or
I'll,
is in with others.
yeah, thank you, Mary. I think, you know, in terms of this, so you have an instrumental music teacher, you have a vocal music teacher. But the way in which they deliver their lessons, a standard core teacher, English language arts, math, science, social studies, they're going to teach 5 periods a day. You're going to see those numbers of classrooms. But the way in which the operation of instrumental music works, where a small group will come and take their instrumental music, it doesn't align as well with this type of report, but it just gives you concept wise of how many students are there, but their groupings are different, and those happen over the course of a week as well. Some of it does have to fit in with scheduling, obviously. These are the flex schedules that work around the core areas because we don't want to disrupt the core areas. So it's almost limited in timing, so they do end up having to group together. Otherwise, it's gonna be getting pulled from language arts perhaps to be able to get the lessons so that we can get all the students in to get lessons together.
And just with the middle school groups, it was a little harder for, just to give you an example, high school art, the way it's captured, or high school music shows that at times we may have, on page 30 for your reference, drawing 1 and 2 and AP art all meeting at the same time. So they're scheduled concurrently. So in any one class, you might have 2 students, 3 students, or 17. So there's actually a total of 22 students in the room at that time. So it's similar in the middle school music program. So it looks like a singleton here and 2 kids here, they might actually, they're in the room at the same time. It's just not represented as well on that chart.
All right.
We could share that
Doesn't
with
come
you.
across in the report. All right, very good.
Yeah.
Speaking of the high school music program, I was surprised to see the number of guitar classes that we have a teacher assigned to. There's several of them. If you're looking for a certain number of credits for a student to be graduating, I would certainly recommend that they take a course in world history rather than a guitar lesson, perhaps. But that's a comment.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a few other comments in the presentation on Monday night. On slide 5. Well, that's again, it goes, yes, okay, let's skip that. Let's go to slide 9. Here's that. Slide 9 addresses adding a course. But if you're adding a course, you're also eliminating a course.
This personal finance course?
Yes. So if you're adding that into the schedule, that means you're also eliminating the course in the schedule there too. This is only a certain number of courses that can be taken during the course of the day.
It's not, so this is a different, so we have a personal finance course and then this dual enrollment, which is also a college credit bearing course that's gonna be taken, so it's not one and the same. This is an added course that gets built into that high school schedule, that students then will request to take. Okay.
On slide number 16. Another comment. The elementary classroom teacher reduction of 81,000. That I assume is the average salary, does not include benefits. If you're eliminating a teacher, you're also eliminating the benefits. Benefits normally run what, 40 to 50,000?
Well, it is a beginning. It'll be a beginning level teacher, so it was one of our lowest paid teachers, and frequently they aren't even taking health insurance, they remain on their parents till 26.
Okay, but you still have the social security, unemployment.
Just Medicare, cause they don't pay social security, we don't pay their pension,
That's true.
so it's almost nothing for a low paid teacher.
All right, so the 81,000 would be a fully. total
Yes.
benefit.
Yeah, I think I would share that, Dave. That was a good question. That was one that I just wanted to make clear is that our beginning teachers are often not on the health insurance plan.
Okay.
And due to the fact that they remain on their parents till they're 26.
Okay. That concludes all my questions at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
I'm sure we're all in favor.
Yeah.
It's like a little, I got these, my partner.